How's it going, everyone? This is Anon. None of this is financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. All right. Just getting everything started. Getting a little late start because I was putting my kids to bed, and then I was talking to my wife because we're trying to plan some trip. So, Jason's first. Official first. What's up, man? In fact, you're the only one in here now for a second. Let me see. Jerry, what's up, man? Jerry's number 2. Jason's the first one. We got 4, 5, 6 people coming in now. All right. How's everyone's day? I was putting my kids to bed. Okay, so did that push out a notification on the Discord? I just want to see. I see it on YouTube. I don't see it, though, on our Discord. Huh. What's up? What's up, Fish? What's up, Mijo? Wow, tuning out wasn't the first. What's up, Josh? Earthium. What's up, James? How are you? How's everyone's trading day? How'd everyone do? It's weird today, right? Oh, you see the Discord. Did it go to everyone, though? Because it's funny because I actually don't have it on mine. I wonder if I muted that bot. Like, I see the Discord link. I just didn't see it go out to everyone. Like, I didn't get to add everyone on the Discord. So. But that's fine, I guess. Alright, so. What are we doing tonight, guys? What do you want to go over? You see the futures? Okay, so you guys got it. I must have muted the bot. Maybe it's my fault. Like, I named it the Contribute Nothing bot, and then that was probably mean, and that won't give me my updates. All right, so let's see if we get a couple more people in here, and then it's at everyone from bot. It only goes to the smart people. Is HUSA play? Yeah, I think it is, actually. So here's the thing, right? So I was playing around with some numbers, and I saw something that was interesting. Like, here's, like, it had broken up past here, but it kind of was bouncing around. And I don't have this perfectly lined up, but it looks like it went up basically to the 61% retracement on the fib, and it looks like it bounced kind of off of this what is that, 20 or 70, 78 for the retracement. So I'm wondering, like, if this is basically the bottom for now and this is a consolidation period before it makes another run up, because they don't have much of a float, but they also don't have much of a retail following at this point that I can tell. So, like, let me just show you guys something. So the float on them is pretty small, and I need to get the dilution tracker. We have a discount code through them, and I've got to get it to dirty. But I can show you guys because I was told that I'm allowed to show you guys dilution tracker. Okay, so in this case, we're going to go over here and we're going to pull up HUSA, right? So if you look here, their overall risk is pretty low. They don't have right now, like, all their stuff already got used. Like, they don't really even have a shelf anymore because they already raised all the money. So they only have like $1 million raisable from that shelf, which it actually expired anyway. They depleted all these ATMs already, right? But there's only literally 800,000 left on this, and these ones already depleted completely, right? So they actually have like money too. And then these ones right here are all depleted also for the convertibles. And the bridge loan right now is not registered. So they like, and it wasn't even that much. It was only like 94,000 warrants. So they really don't have any dilution risk on the table at all. So that to me for a small cap is pretty important. And then if you look at this though, like they don't really need a ton of cash. Like the company's got 154 months left based off of the tiny bit of cash burn they use right now. So like they're looking pretty interesting because look at this. Like their float is only like 9 million shares, right? Like that's pretty small. So like here, if we go, I don't have Ortex's permission, but do other YouTubers, can they show their Ortex, or is that like, you guys know? Like, do other people pull it up? Or do I have to keep screenshotting this and then bringing it over? You guys tell me. I don't know if I like this new configuration they're using. I actually find it a little harder to follow. You guys seen the new Ortex, like how they make the thing look? It's not like the old one. I just have to get used to it. But it's 100% utilization on HUSA. The cost to borrow right now is saying it's hard to follow now. Like, I'm not a fan of that. All right, so are you guys talking? Like, do you guys know if it's I'm allowed to show Ortex, or should I just screenshot and bring it over? I'll be safe right now. I don't want to get the video removed. So what I'll do is I'll screenshot for right now. Bring it over. Okay. So I guess they move stuff around. So what I saw was right now, where was it? Utilization's at 100%, right? And the cost of borrow is pretty high on it. Days to cover, they're having some volumes. That's that's fine. So they have right now, it looks like about 2.65 million shares on loan, with the free float being about close to 30%. It was higher, but they also had that run up, right? So what I'm curious about is the next time oil spikes, is this going to be a stock that has buy pressure on it again from retail? Because this stock could really run because it's such a small market cap. Like, or it's not market cap, it's such a small float that, like, if retail shows interest into this, and I think if I remember correctly, the options chains on it were pretty stacked. Let me check something out. Hold on one second. I'm going to see if we can pull this up. What's up, guys? Is anyone tracking ATER competition? I'd be interested to compare. Yeah, we could do that as like a side project hustle. Like tomorrow, we could probably do that as a side project during the day if we can get a couple people to kind of start researching competitors and then kind of put them all in the same bucket and see what they look like compared to each other. Okay. Oh, wait. I got to do one thing I forgot. So I keep forgetting to do something that apparently is pretty important, which is actually monetize your videos. You don't get paid unless you monetize. And so I keep forgetting to do it. And then I'm like, all right, here we go. There. I can say the silent streams are, no one's looking at that silent stream right now, but in the off chance someone clicks on it. All right. So we were going to do that, and then we're going to take a look at option flow on HUSA, and then we'll move on to Aterian and a couple other tickers. I know because a lot of people obviously want to see what that's about. We can kind of go over some numbers, and I am actually doing a DD, which I'm trying to basically compile data for all the different squeeze stocks, and then kind of just compare them all together. Not as something that's like, not really a competition, but I just want to see kind of the general state right now of all the stocks that people are in, because I think it's interesting. All right, so if we do option flow and we filter ticker HUSA, let's take a look and see how options are flowing. And this is actually the first time I'm using this one, so let's see how it looks. All right, let's see if we can disseminate some of this, because I'm doing this on the fly, so we'll do it live. Just don't turn on mid-roll ads because they interrupt you live. I don't even know how to do that awesomeness, dude. I have no idea how that works. So I don't think I'm turning on any mid-roll ads because, yeah. All right, so let's take a look. Some $7 calls. All right, so let's look for someone that have high amounts of. All right, so I need a filter, I think. These are just like every one of them because I'm seeing like size 1, size 5. So it looks like I need to somehow filter these. Sort by premium. Yeah, there's the big ones. All right, so a bunch of people are buying $1 calls for 18 days from now, because I think they're only monthlies right now, right? Let's do that for the last. Were you able to see that? Size. Okay. All right, cool. So let's do this. I'm going to go and pull up the options chart so we can just take a look at this on the fly, and then we can figure out kind of what we're seeing for next month, or yeah, I think 18 days from now, which is the July monthly. So I'm going to do, hold on, shoot, I screwed up. Let me do all, because I want to see all the different expirations. Okay, there we go. And all the different strikes. Here we go. All right, here we go. And if I can get it. Let's see. And it was what? HUSA, right? I don't know why it's not. Here we go. That's better. All right. So it's not as big as it was last month, and it looks like there's a decent amount up at 10. We don't know if those are sold calls or puts, though, but we'll try to figure out that as we go along, and I'm starting to track this a little more. But there's a fair amount of stuff that's around the money right now. There's not as much, it looks like, on the put side right now. It looks like there's some puts here at the 6. Oh, come on, O'Reilly. He could do it live. All right. So, yeah. So, not a ton. Like, there's a little bit of options activity obviously going. And there's a good amount that's actually, it looks like, in the money right now. Like, not like a huge amount, but there's a decent amount in the money here. So this thing could move if oil starts, like, kind of taking a nice, run up like it did last time, you could see this stock run up again. But or if retail just gets interested because it's got such a small float, retail, obviously could cause FTDs on this thing is my guess. Because let me just see if I pull up that again. Let me pull up FTDs. Yeah, FTDs were starting to spike right before the run up, and I guess. Did we get all the FTD data out recently? Let me pull up Fintel and see. So if we're gonna research this, and I'll just kind of explain to you guys what I do when I go through a lot of these, and that way, if you don't have the tools, but you can follow along. All right, so small. Let's see. They think it's about 18% of the float right now. They've got a squeeze score on Fintel of about 73 out of 5,000. They don't actually have a gamma listed there, which is interesting. Not a ton of shares, but the cost to borrow has been solidly above 100 for the last 15 days. So that goes to show you that liquidity is pretty low on the stock. They don't have a ton of shares laying around. Yeah, so the FTDs looks like up until we should have gotten the second half of these. Where are they? They're gonna make me go through this, aren't they? It's a pain in the butt. They're gonna make me go through this manually because Fintel doesn't have it updated. The FTD data came out, right? It came out today, I think. Did it show up on Ortex? Ortex changed their stuff around. Yeah, so let's check if there's... no, there's no warrants at all. In fact, we pulled up Dilution Tracker was the first one we did. So there's no dilution on HUSA. Yeah, but I'll pull up Dilution Tracker just so you guys can see it with your own eyes, because I got permission from Sean over there, and I'll give you guys a code if you guys are interested in this product, because I think it's actually really good, because on the fly you can do a lot of quick research. Yeah, so it's got a float of 9 million roughly, and if you look here, normally what you would see is you'd see dilution up here, right? So right now there's only 9.93 million shares outstanding. If you look at the float, it's basically insiders own a couple 100,000 of shares, and then if you look here, all the dilution, so these aren't even registered, so you don't have to worry about them, and there was only 94,000 of them anyway. Right here, your Series B convertible is 0 because it's already been depleted. Your Series A is 0, it's already been depleted. All these are depleted right here. This one was replaced, but it's only $800,000 that they have left. And it's been replaced. And then this one right here expired, and it was only $1 million. So any of that stuff is already gone. So just throwing it out there. But yeah, so it doesn't have any dilution risks, which is phenomenal, and it's got a tiny float. So if retail was actually interested in this stock, and we already know they have liquidity problems, right? Because we saw on their cost to borrow right now is over 100%. I think I'll screenshot it for you guys so you can see. Here. Because I won't get in trouble with Fintel but here. Look at this. So their cost to borrow has been significantly high for a long time. So that must mean that they're running out of shares. They don't have a ton of shares laying around. They've already lent out probably a lot of shares. And remember, they only have 9 million of them. So even if that's a small float. And you have to understand, if we look at institutional ownership on that, let's see, who owns the stock? insiders own about 15% of the stock, which is 1.5 million. That's what they're reporting. So if we do some math here, whatever that calculator went over there. Okay, so we have I won't put the 9. Come on, there we go. 9930000, right? And then we'll subtract. It says insiders own 1.52793. Okay. So that's what's left after insiders, according to Fintel. So that's your float. So, I mean, that's a tiny float, which is why they're probably having such issues, and that's why they keep having these little runs up on it. Because if you look back, this was a stock that was trading at I think it was 80-something cents, 88 cents at their low. And then they hit a spring level. Let me just zoom out a little bit. Yeah, a couple of years ago, this stock hit a low of 88 cents. And then since then, because it's such a small thing, it's had these runs. And then I said I didn't place the fib levels perfectly, but you can see kind of it kind of went to this one. It went all the way up to this one, and then came back down, and then it came up to this one again, and now it's starting to curl back up. I'd like to see if we start getting some greens back on here and start seeing some CCI crossovers, and then to see if we can actually... But if you look, the money flow's been up on this and kind of remained high. So I think some people are actually holding it just from any squeeze standpoint. Anytime you see this run up all together, it means you're getting good buying pressure. They're pushing the price down. If you look, you can actually see they shorted a fair amount over the last couple of days, 60% short, stuff like that. So, but yeah, it's an interesting ticker. So, I think Jason was asking about that. So there you go, Jason. There's some good information on that. That's going to be included in the one I cover on my DD. So, but yeah, it's one that definitely is an interesting, play, especially if oil goes back up and stays up. These guys will probably have a good earnings report, despite them being a small, small cap oil company. Right now, oil, they're trying to find it anywhere they can. So if these guys actually are producing oil, they'll make a lot of money. And then that will probably make their balance sheet look even better. Because, so this could be a play that actually goes somewhere, possibly, just based off of how small the float is. Because I think it will whipsaw back and forth. But it's going to be one of those, dilution's not on the table at this point right now. Now, they can always issue something out and whip up something, but we'll see a filing for that. So... there you go. Okay. You want to do Aterian? Which ones do we want to do right now? Because not a lot's new on Aterian. I think DZ had covered a bunch of stuff on the Discord today. For anyone that missed that, he basically was thinking that we were going to see a push down to probably maybe 250s. I think we got down to 245, 244, something like that. Too pro from hater from New Plays. He'll be off there at some point. Houston, do we have lift up? Hey, we could. I mean, at some point, it was down today, and this was a bearish candle. So, if the market tanks or continues to tank, then I would imagine that you'll see more downside on this stock. So, at this point right now, I wouldn't be buying anything. Personally for me, I think you need to have some theta on this stock. So I wouldn't be playing options anywhere near the money or too far out as far as a strike. Just throwing that out, and then I'm giving myself plenty of theta. I think I have some November options, so I've got some time on this one. I've also bought some shares. So besides that, you've got Aterian right now hit that basically we talked about it, and it bounced perfectly off this, line. We'll see if we get, if the market crashes tomorrow, if the market all of a sudden hits a huge down day, right? We just get a huge candle like this. I told people, and I think we'll just keep covering it. I've been hedging, and I'm not telling anyone what to do with their money, but I told people back in the day, I don't know, weeks and weeks ago, that I thought the SPY is coming down to a minimum of at least 340s. And the reason I say that is because if I go here on the SPY and I go zoom out, where is the minutes? Okay, it's down here. Okay. Right. So I drew this line out here for people right here. And the reason I drew it out is because I remember this very distinctly because we gapped up like, I don't know, like 6 days in a row, it felt like. And this was back during the election cycle. And we just kept gapping up. And because you know how I know that so well? Because I was buying puts and I thought we were going to have a nice big old drop off, going into a contentious election. And of course, what they do, they burned me and the rest of retail that were bearish, and they gapped up all these days. So I knew at some point we were going to come back and fill this area. So I drew a line here, and I started buying 350 puts and buying SPXU at like $20. And I think we're going to go ahead and see those levels again. Because if you look, even though we're far away, we're not that far away. I can't go down for some reason. Probably need to learn how to use this thing better, but it moves. But like I said, if you look where we are right now, we're here, right? 390s, right? 388. When we were hit down here at 362 just a couple days ago, that's not that far. That's like, 340s is not that far away from it. So we are very much in this range where we can maybe dead cat bounce and just absolutely fall through the floor. And yeah, if you, Anon, show them the VIX calls, specifically in October. Okay, so I'll pull up some VIX stuff. I think Fish sent me that earlier. All right, so Fish sent me... Oh, you know what? Hey, Fish, can you actually send those through the Discord and not the other app? Are you able to do that? Because I can't pull them up on this. I'm on my home computer, so I can't actually show them the ones that you sent through the other thing. All right, but I guess I could pull it up if you can't do that. But while he's pulling that up, basically what it's showing you is if you're going to buy, for example, something that you think is going to happen relatively soon, like in the next couple of weeks, but you're not exactly sure on the timing, what you would do is you give yourself some theta to be safe. A lot of people think that, okay, well, they bought October VIX calls. Like, it must be crashing in October. No, it's more likely going to crash in probably like July or August. The reason why, you give yourself some time. That way it doesn't eat at your theta as much. So if you were going to play that pretty close to the chest, you would buy in October for something that's in the summer. So, but there was like a high amount of them, like super. And if you actually look, Smart Money actually, oh, you know what? I can do this while he's pulling up the VIX information. This was, I think, SPY. Unusual whales. Okay, here we go. All right. So if you look at the SPY, right, the S&P, a lot of this stuff came at the end of the day. And this was a huge amount of like bearish calls at the end of the day that came in. Like 75% were puts and like bearish puts at that. Like if you look how much premium got spent on bearish today, that's not a good sign for if you're long. And I still have a lot of my stuff long. It's just, I've placed a side bet, basically, that's my hedge against all this. So what happens for me is, I put a good chunk, maybe like, I think I have like, I don't know, like a $50,000 to $60,000 hedge right now, and I'm trying to grow it. It's just, there's all these like plays that I'm looking at as well, and I'm like, what do you put it in? But I think this is more of a sure bet that at some point we're going to see the 340s again. So I've been putting down a good amount of money on the side into this, because what I'll do is when everything comes crashing down, it's going to bring down everything, and then what's going to end up happening is I'm going to be able to use all those like bullish calls like XPXU and my SPY puts, and I'm going to use that money to start buying back long again. And I won't do it all. I'm going to keep some cash. I'm not going to go, because that may not be the bottom. But I will at least start dollar cost averaging down on the stocks that I like. So, because I think there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff to buy. What if it doesn't crash and they steal my premium? Well, I make more money if the stock market's ripping back up. So for me, this is a hedge. And I'm willing to take that risk, that essentially that if the stock market doesn't crash, then I'll still make money on the other side. I'll just have to go, well, this was the price of me, making sure that I was protecting my assets long. So, if you want to protect yourself, you can always do this, even when the market's going up. Like, it's actually the smart thing to do, because if you think about it, like, all right, you've worked hard for your assets, right? When you drive a car, they require you to have car insurance, right? So if you have all your assets long and you have nothing to protect you from the downside, well, what's going to happen if the market crashes? You're going to get burned, and that's why it's so painful watching the market crash for most people, is because if you think about it, like, nobody ever has this, like, hedge. So I'm doing this for myself, and I'm doing this for, I'm telling other people about it because I think it's the smart thing to do. Because if I'm wrong, like, number one, it's not financial advice, but, like, if I'm wrong, then you're still going to probably make more money on the long side. But if I'm right about the market coming crashing down, which I think it will, at least to the 340s at this point, to fill those gaps. I mean, the algos like those, those gaps. And all those gaps are typically areas of liquidity. And if you guys don't know about, like, liquidity trading, like, they try to make sure they fill up the entire chain. And so if you kind of ever seen those charts that have, like, the yellow and blue, I think TradeView has a couple of them. I probably should pull it up for you guys at some point, but I don't have TradeView set up on this computer because I usually do it at work. But essentially what all it's doing is it actually goes through and it shows you where everybody's bought at. When you gap up or gap down, typically you won't spend a lot of time in those areas, so those areas are left kind of illiquid, so they haven't filled them in yet. So what ends up happening is the computer is going to go back at some point and seek that number to try to make sure that they fill in that area as well. So, but yeah, so, like, I expect fully at some point us to revisit this area. And maybe it does go back into the twos at some point. But for right now, I'm just looking at, like, 340. So I bought 350 puts. So for me, I started buying them back up here, and they made some money. But I every time it goes up, I just add more. So for me, that's my hedge. Yeah, not financial advice, but that's personally what I'm doing to protect my assets. Because if you don't have that hedge, it feels pretty bad when things go down. Okay, you know what? Fish came through. He's got some VIX stuff going on. Let's see. Come on, open up. There we go. So, if you look at, just to show you, look at that open interest. That's a lot of open interest on the VIX. And these are all calls. So somebody's looking at, like, a market crash. Like, somebody's playing this for, like, straight up a market crash. Like, these are $75, or sorry, no, sorry, that's October 19th, and those are calls for 75, right? Yeah, $30, $60, 75, like, so they may not think it's going to get that high, but just because like the IV is going to like spike on it, so like they'll make money off that, and that's probably what they're going to play. Yeah, like large institutions are hedging with the VIX right now. And VIX only goes up when you actually are having like huge amounts of volatility and uncertainty in the market. So yeah, I mean, like all those are calls. For calls for VIX, typically are. I mean, I guess they could be selling them, but for the most part, you don't have a $75 call on for selling that. Like, yeah. So if you want to look again, like that is a huge amount of open interest, and what that means is even though they're set up for October, this is for July. But this is only 30. But like some of the bigger ones, like the September, the October, like these are all enough theta that like you would think that this is going to happen in the next couple of weeks to a month. So just throwing it out there. I mean, like not to freak anyone out, and honestly, like don't knee jerk. That's what a lot of people do. But you can position yourself to be safer if you want to. That's what I'm doing. Because there's still a chance that, like, here's the thing, right? So if you own a bunch of meme stocks, the last time the market was crashing, memes were flying. And those two went kind of hand in hand. So, like, rich ass Anon. VIX is fairer because it doesn't trend down like UVXY. So just so everyone understands with UVXY, UVXY does not track the VIX. It tracks VIX futures, which are the M1 and M2. So month 1 and month 2 VIX futures. So what ends up happening on this typically is you will have nothing and you will just bleed forever until one day you have a spike like this. This was COVID, where the VIX went from like what was it, like $4 or $5? No, this is when they split it. So it went from, let's say, about 100 right there, right, to a high of like 1,000. Yeah, like 1,300. So like it like 13x right there, right, like in a matter of a couple weeks. Because things were shutting down, nobody knew what was going on, people were like dying all over the world. So like this was like the world was basically ending, and so this thing flew during that time frame. But here's the thing: most of the time, it just bleeds forever, right? So now it looks like it's consolidating, and now we're going to see at some point this huge spike up, possibly. But the question is when. Like the problem with the VIX stuff is if you play the VIX stuff. Oh, is it safer? Yeah. I mean, like, it's less volatile, but it also makes less because it's not a 2.5 times leveraged VIX position. So, Nike has fallen around 3% since I opened you opened a strangle on it? Interesting. Long short on UVXY until your account blows up. Yeah, I mean... It's one of those, just be careful with this thing, because this is like a double-edged sword. Like, you can lose a lot of money with UVXY, like a lot. I've done it in the past successfully and unsuccessfully. I've made a ton of money, and I also lost a ton of money on betting on the VIX. So be careful with that. I'm just throwing it out there. But what did the VIX do then, COVID UVXY? All right. So that's the COVID pop, right? Started on basically, what is that, 2020 or 2/20/20? Yeah, so if you want, I'll type in the VIX to just show you. So you can see, like, the VIX went from like 12 to basically like 85. But this is actually the VIX, like, indicator, not the actual like trading VIX stuff. There's other vehicles besides just VIX. Like, you don't buy the VIX, you buy other vehicles that track the VIX. So just throwing it out there for it then. I've got a call for AMC. Yeah, I mean, AMC had a nice run today. It was doing pretty well. My guess would be it has to do probably with Top Gun, and people showing that they're going back to the movies, and that makes people now go, well, you know, could there be a good earnings? And if they do have a good earnings, is this going to be something that's like, oh, well, you might have a nice run like this again? All these stocks, and I think, let me see if I can pull this up, because I thought this was something interesting, because some of you guys know who Susan T is. I think it's like Trembeth or something. I don't know how to say her last name. I didn't pay that close attention, to be honest with you. But let me see if I can find her. Susan Trimbath. Dr. Susan Trimbath. Suzanne Trimbath. She wrote that book, Naked, Short, and Greedy, for anyone that's not read it before. But she was explaining that something very, very interesting happened over here, which is this string of, make sure I'm signed in. Okay, here we go. I think we're fine here. Okay. After acknowledging moral hazard problem, P107 House GameStop report sets the stage for routine broker bailouts because the DTCC is systematically important enough for a bailout. Well, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? Yeah, so during January, what ends up happening is they deemed that this was going to be a huge issue for them, so they bailed them out. And who did they bail out? It was the brokers. The brokers, our brokers, were the ones that were screwing us. Right? Okay. So, then it says it represents represents moral hazard that undermines the deterrent value of excess capital premium charge, specifically firms that may not be deterred from riskier trading practices because they know that they'll be modified or waived when the greatest default. So basically what they're saying is they knew that they were going to be in trouble, so they basically made sure that they were in deep trouble themselves because they knew they would get a bailout. So the DTCC, its subsidiary, the NSCC, and the SEC and Congress should look at basically emergency backstop funding. Yeah, so like the whole idea behind what she was basically saying was they knew they were in trouble, so they made sure that things got as bad as possible because they would get a bailout. And essentially what they said was because the NSCC is designated a systemically important financial market utility under Dodd-Frank, and the Financial Stability Oversight Council should study these things, so the NSCC's regular waiver collateral charges during this period precluded voluntary. But they basically were saying the markets rebounded on Friday when this news came out because failure, disincentives, no mandatory buy-ins, and every broker gets a bailout. Like that's what just apparently passed. So like they're basically making sure that people don't have to pay out margin calls and don't have to like they're basically trying to bail out these brokers and hope that everyone gives up as far as like all these long-term squeeze plays like GameStop and AMC and all that stuff. Like they are literally passing laws to try to basically protect themselves from it. So AMC would fall into that. GameStop would fall into that. GameStop especially. I think, to me, GameStop is like the thorn in their side because they literally have retail traders actively trying to remove shares out of the DTCC, which is what is trying to cover up all this stuff. And eventually, as long as GameStop doesn't issue out more shares, they're doing a stock split, but that's different than issuing more shares. Pick in Discord DM. Okay. All right, let me see. Oh, here you go. You've got AMC. I'll save it for you. Here, we'll use yours because yours has pretty TA on it. If I can find it. Oh, you know what? Oh, that didn't work because I saved it as a Discord document and it doesn't open like that. Let me see. Open original. Save as. Okay, here we go. Bearish pennant. No. Well, it looks like we'll have a very important day tomorrow to see where this goes. Because if it pops back up and fills in, we'll see. There you go. Thanks, Rich. Trigger a huge bear pennant or a bear flag right before one of those huge pumps. Yeah, I mean, I see what you talked about on the other one. I mean, I think they're trying to make it look as bad as possible to get people out before they know they have to cover, is my opinion. That's my guess. Because what typically happens is they have a run usually at the end of the day or they gap up and then, you know, they have these weird runs. But yeah, tomorrow will be an interesting day in that range of like 14 to, I don't know, like 1390s, I guess. Would shorting AMC be a good play considering it's a really predictable chart? Like, number one, not financial advice. So here's my thing. Maybe, because it seems to be that we're just in this constant loop. The problem is one day it may not be, and then if you're, I would just be careful. But yeah, like I'm starting to get to this point where I'm like, okay, so it seems like they're not letting certain things obviously go, right? So like we've seen it before where every time we see a stock make a massive pop up, it usually gets beat down for a while, right? So like let's look at REV, right? So Revlon had that nice huge run up, right? You had like I think it was mainly 1, 2, 3, 4, gap up 4. I told people it was going to fill that gap, and it did. And then right now it looks like it will consolidate, maybe form a bear flag or a bull flag. We'll see, but like a bull flag would be more likely. You might see it dip down to the 5s again, and then maybe another run up. It just really depends. They have a small float on that stock, right? If I remember correctly, right? I think let's see, does it show shares outstanding? But we can pull up the information for REV because I think they have like a tiny float. Yeah, Revlon's float is they have 70% of their 70% short interest of the free float right now. What is the free float for them? They're reporting 5 million shares. Another small like float. So yeah, AMC can be shorted, but don't do it at the open. Wait for the trend. Yeah. So once again, like what we've seen though is like for every, and let's pull up Redbox, right? Because Redbox is a perfect example. Redbox is different because Redbox got screwed, to be honest with you. So what do we find out, right? We saw this massive run up, right? We saw this run here, came back down. Everyone's like, it's over. And then they ran back up. This is where basically I was like, you have to watch out for the warrants at 11. They're going to try to get those unlocked probably before the merger happens, right? Well, then they revealed right around here that the merger warrants were going to be, the warrants were going to be put on like basically back burner because of the merger announcement. And so we were like, okay, well, there you go. now it can run. So it had that massive day. I bought some calls, and then once it got to 18, I was like, I'm buying puts on this thing. And I got puts at 16, I think. It went higher than I thought. It went to 18, but at 16 I bought puts, and then I ended up taking a loss on them. And some of you guys know that story. But because they literally the next day made me during this day. I bought the puts, I think, here. Like the stock ran up to like 13 or 14, so I bought $16 puts. This day it ran up to like 18, and then they told me I had to close my position by 1 p.m. And right at 1 p.m. is when it dropped. But I had already sold by then because I had to be closed by then. So that felt pretty dirty. Anyway, though, whenever you see these massive runs up, we typically see like at least a thing come down. So, sometimes it's like, all right, well, what else has ran recently? Aterian was one of them. Like, they had a massive gamma ramp, and the volume runs out. And I'm starting to think what ends up happening is retail only has a certain amount of money, right? They don't have infinite, ammo. So what they end up doing is they wait. It's kind of like a boxer, right? They kind of rope-a-dope. Like they'll sit there and they'll let these stocks run. In fact, they'll even help push them up. But what they end up doing is they wait till retail's basically out of ammo, doesn't have anything left in the tank, and then they just massively push these things down. And retail can't do anything. They can't have any more buying pressure because they have no more money. They only get paid once a week, and they don't just have millions of reserves sitting around their back pocket like these guys do. So these guys will push it down, start freaking out retail, more retail starts selling, and then at some point it will just start waterfalling. And then these guys also have warrants at 11.50, if you remember, and I think they got brought back because if I remember correctly, as I was typing this in, you can see they have warrants here as well. There. So they brought back the warrants. So the warrants are in play right now. Just throwing it out there. Yeah, Kirk is interesting. Kirk's got a tiny float, if I remember correctly. I bought 10 calls. I think one of you guys talked to me about it. We have to do Vroom first. Vroom. Oh, there we go. Vroom. Okay. Who knows about Vroom Vroom? This one's an interesting one, right? So these guys at one point were like $75, and then they've been massively just falling like knife. Nobody wanted to touch them. They came down here and basically hit a spring right here. And then since then, they've been accumulating and then starting to make these moves up. And they're trying to keep this thing down, but it looks like a lot of people went net long on these ones, and if you look at PB right here, I don't know if this is accurate. Fish, maybe you can confirm this, but they've got a PB right now 0.3644. Where's the PS? Do they have it listed on this part? Probably not. All right. Now I gotta go look. Hold on. Where is room? Okay. So let's take a look. Let's see if we can find it. Fundamentals. So price per book was 17 cents last year. We don't have that yet, but let me see quarterly if they've improved. Yeah, they're still positive. But let's take a look. So we don't have that in that section. I'll probably have to actually just look it up. Do you know what it is offhand, Fish? PS is left. Oh, here it is, 0.06. There you guys go. All right. But the interesting thing is if we go to the short interest on these guys, right? Let's go to the short interest. No, we'll go over Aterian after this. I think we've got to do Kirk, and then I'll kind of do Aterian because I wanted to wait to make sure people were in here for Aterian. So I started off on doing some other tickers, but yeah, we can definitely do Aterian. Kind of right in the next couple of minutes. Let me just finish up with this one. Here to the moon. Yeah, I mean most people have Aterian in here, so we'll definitely cover that in detail, so we guys kind of get a good sense of, obviously the DDM writing right now is going to compare all the different ones in the short squeeze space and, kind of go over all the numbers. But, yeah, so Vroom's at 100% utilization. About 31% of the free float is shorted. Is that right? Yeah, so that's like 37.28 million shares right now are shorted. But this utilization has been high for a good amount of time. It's been 100% since, looks like, it hit some back in May, and then it's been kind of basically chopping around the top 90s. But it's starting to look like this is going to reverse pretty violently. At least come up. It's going to be the next one probably that pops at some point. So I do think Vroom will pop and, make a move up at some point right now. Like, it kind of reminds me right now of BBBY, which the reason why it reminds me of that is just because it started consolidating and it's been like, you had a couple of good days where you're like, oh, maybe this thing's going to go, and then it kind of drags a little bit more down. And then, you end up kind of just more consolidation. So that's kind of what I think Vroom's been doing is, it's just starting, because this day could have been like a good day, and then it kind of went back down to consolidation pattern. So it's kind of reminding me of BBBY. And I actually would be curious to see them overlaid on top of each other because it looks very similar. But the only difference is BBBY hasn't had this pop like this in volume too. Like this was actually a decent amount of volume. So that's what BBBY is missing. But we'll see. Let's see. I've got August calls. I hope it jumps before then. Yeah, I reminds me of ATER. Yeah, let's pull up ATER real quick. But yeah, I can go into detail on that a little bit more. But yeah, Aterian's same sort of thing. It's kind of been dragging down. It's been consolidating for a while. We hit these lows, 336 right there. Today we tried pushing down to like 246. Could we see another revisit into that? Sure. I mean, it could come down and bounce off that, kind of like a spring area. But this is a stock that honestly keeps getting and getting and getting like, people buying it and they're holding it, and I'm sure it's annoying for shorts. Like if I was a short, I'd be so annoyed by the stock. It's like, you should be going down. Like this should be a stock that should be easy for us to go and get it to zero. And it just keeps, every time it gets down to these levels, it just pops up. Look at this. Like went back down that level, pops up to like 20. Gets down to 9, pops back up to 16. Gets just completely hammered down for months and months and months. And then all of a sudden runs to like 7. Back down here, if you get back in this range, this loading zone, you're just going to see it. Like it's just going to end up being one of those things where it consolidates in this range, and then you'll see another pop up at some point. So this is how this stock operates. And, I think you've seen that there's a good amount of people on like Fintel that have reported. I know not everyone can. In fact, we were looking at that kind of objectively, and it seems like there's a lot of people in other countries holding Aterian. So, like, Aterian's one of those that at some point it will pop again, and it will pop violently, and it's going to be just like last time, and it'll run to FTDs, and, probably need to get saved by, warrants and stuff like that. Like, that's just what they've been doing. Like, it's been like a pattern, basically. So, like, let me see if I can find here's the Aterian ownership, retail ownership. Did they say it was going? Let me see, log in real quick. All right. Do you have a price target for Aterian? Yeah. So, all right. The reason why these spikes are smaller, though, is two parts, right? So, you have this huge one up here, right? But this happened on very low volume. So this was like when they first kind of were getting some traction. They were getting some good reviews. They actually had some decent earnings. And then here's the thing, right? So they actually had an earnings beat right here. And then they dropped to their all-time low. Or sorry, the recent 52-week low, right? Which at the time was 304. And then they ran to 20. Their float, though, was a lot smaller back then, right? So they ended up having to do dilution here, which is why the stock was getting shorted down so much. So, no, it's not going to be that low. But what I'm telling you right now is the reason why was back here, this float was basically half as much, right? So if you think about this, like if you ran up to 19, like... and then you had all this dilution happen, right? So now you have more shares that are out there. So every single time you're like running now, your market cap is changing too. So because right now we have 171 million market cap, right? Do you guys remember what the balance sheet says, right? Everyone remember? Yeah, ATER's been suppressed down for a long time. So like, but this run right here probably should have gone a little bit higher, right? Like I was expecting more like a $12 like price target right there. Like that was kind of like what I was looking for. And obviously it didn't happen, right? So we had these two massive days down where they reset like a bunch of FTDs with basically the shares from the pre-funded warrants and the like shares from Armistice Capital. And that happened in this range. There was a massive amount of shorting, and that freaked out some of the retailers that were just in the short term. And then this bleed here has been freaking out, obviously, some here too. But here's the thing. There's a core group of people that just keep buying this stock. And what ends up happening is that they're the ones that have a lot of the ownership. So if you keep this up, at some point, this, you know, if they have a turnaround on the stock, the explosion is going to be massive because retail already owns like 80% of the stock. And when that happens, all of a sudden institutions start buying again. There's not enough shares. So what you will see happen is you'll see a huge spike like this happening where, you know, remember, this was an earnings beat here. So what happened was it wasn't just retail buying this all. This was actually institutions buying down here at this range and then going long. So that's what I'm trying to explain is at some point right here, if we get an earnings beat or if something looks like it's starting to turn around for Aterian, by the time that happens, if Aterian retailers keep buying that stock, what's going to end up happening is, all right, so say you're an index fund, right? And you all of a sudden now say, okay, we need to buy 3 million shares of this Aterian stock while it's down here in the fives, right? Say it starts making a run up, right? So what's going to end up happening is this: you're going to sit there and go, okay, by the time supply and demand happens, it's going to blow up because there's nowhere to go because they have to get these shares and they're going to be failing to deliver all over the place, right? Because if retail keeps buying these shares and at some point there's any sort of positive catalyst, including just the overall market, recovering, and then some of these funds buying back into these stocks that are kind of risk, they're out right now because of risk management. You're going to see a massive rise in the stock price because they need to get retail out, and the only way you can get retail out is if you raise the price high enough for them to sell and get out. So, for a lot of people, they're like, it's miserable down here. I know that. We've been down here before. We had a low of 210, 52-week low, right? And everyone was like, this stock's going to 142, and then it ran up to 7. So you're going to see these runs back and forth. But I'm just saying the longer it hangs out down here, the more power retail ends up gaining. And then eventually what ends up happening is if anything positive happens for the stock, this thing flies. And it's going to fly really, really, really high because there's going to be so much like retail interest that's already there that you're going to see just massive amounts of failure to deliver again. They will go on reg show. It's all this stuff. So do you have confidence there are several retail guys, whales, blah, 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 who have the boat loaded with shares? So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. The one thing I can say is I trust Fintel's numbers because they're an impartial third party and they're actually like tracking. So I think what I was trying to show you guys was if you go to like Fintel and you can look at ownership, right? I think I logged in. We said SEC. We said insiders. Retail ownership. It shows you right here. Top view of the top companies with retail ownership, and Aterian is at the top of the list with them retail owning 6.13% of the float. So that's pretty good. Hey Anna, good hearing from you. Thanks, Empress. I was gonna say it's been a while. Yeah, I started. It's been like 4 days since I streamed. I think, mainly just because. Yeah, and I don't. Like I said, I don't know right now. I can trust Fintel. That's all I can trust because you can tell me you have 1 billion shares. That's awesome, and I hope you do. But like at the same time, unless I see it with my own eyes, then I'm just going to go off the things that I think are being reported correctly, which is Fintel is saying, hey, you guys own 6% of the float with just the people that registered with us. And I know there's a lot of people there. Yeah, I have a different name in the Discord. I like to keep my anonymity. Yeah, and that's fine, Josh. I was going to say everyone can have their own opinion, but yeah, I have 1 trillion shares, and that's awesome. And I hope, I don't want the float to be 1 trillion, but, I hope you own 1 trillion shares on top of a 63 or 68 million, shares outstanding float. But yeah, like for me right now, I'm just going to go off the numbers that I know I feel like I can trust, which is that the retail float is saying that 6% of it's locked up by retailers that have registered their shares. I know a couple guys who have over 100,000 shares, like personally, that are not registered with Fintel right now. So I'm just telling you guys right now, I know not every whale is registered there, whether by choice or, whatever. Not everyone trusts the internet, and so they didn't, particularly want to register their shares on that thing, and that's their prerogative. I think that it's fine. I've used Plaid before. I used Plaid actually quite a bit in other purchases I've made, and linked accounts, and banks trust it. So I don't see any reason why you shouldn't. But everyone's got their own risk management, and if they feel like they don't want to link some random things, and I have somewhere between 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. Yep. I have a couple thousand, 50% down. Yeah. But it's only a loss if you sell. That's the way I look at it. So I showed this to a lot of people, and I'll go over it one more time, but I bought a stock that got beat down pretty badly. It was Switch. So when they first came out, I'm just going to pull up the monthly so you guys can see. I bought them at their IPO, and I bought them in the 20s, right? So I bought shares right up here, like 23, right? And then this is on the monthly, so I can just show you on the weekly what this looks like. It did not feel good to watch you buying shares at 20, and then it goes all the way down to 6. It's a rough ride, right? And I bought a lot of them because I thought what they were doing was very interesting, and I thought, hey, but some of these dips, like, they were pretty massive, and they felt bad. Like, look, earnings miss, boom, just down, 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 down. It was a falling knife. Looks more extreme on the monthly, but I'm just trying to show you guys what happens, right? So if you showed me a chart of this stock, right, and I said this is the monthly on it, and I shut it off right here, You'd be like, that stock's going out of business. Like, boom. Why is it this? Why does it feel like every IPO gets shorted down year and then they pop back up? I mean, it's what happens. These guys short this stuff down because they want to acquire it. So, just doubling back on Kirk. Curious why you grabbed a few calls. Oh yeah, I'll go into that in a second. I'll cover that. But I just want to tell the story about why you shouldn't give up hope. Is because IPO, I bought the stock and I just averaged down. Like every time it dipped, I just bought more and I bought more, and everyone was like, "You're a glutton for punishment, man." I was down like 60% on the stock, if not more, at one point, and I think I was like 60 or 70% down on the stock in the beginning because I bought a bunch up here. So like even with the cost averaging down like the teens and then like even sub 10, but I thought the company was worth more than it was being presented as. So I kept on it, right? So, and then you can see the recovery. It's now trading in the 30s, even during this bad market. Like, yeah. So at some point, you just have to realize that if you have strong convictions on something and you believe that the company is worth more than the market is presenting it, what you do is you buy, and that's how I felt about Aterian. Always felt like something went weird with this stock. Like this is a stock that was at 48 at some point, or $49 a share, went all the way down to 3, then back up to 20, then back up to 9 from like. Then to 9, and then up to like 16, and then it's just been bleeding, and then it ran up to 7. This stock's really, really manipulated. And you can see, like, this thing's a mess. Like, this is a huge amount of, like, just up, down, chop, chop, chop. So, for me, I look at it this way. At some point, this thing's going to reverse, and it's going to go massively up because if retail stays committed to the stock, it's just blocking up and it's priming it more for explosive turnaround. Because what ends up happening is if they couldn't shake people out of here, because this might have been an attempt to shake people out, because if you get their, say for example, a lot of people that average down all throughout this range, right? They finally had a chance to get out at like 4, 5, 6. Maybe that's what their cost average was. You gave them a chance to get out, and some of them might have, but at the same time, the ones that are still in now are the ones that keep holding, and you've pushed down the price now back into this accumulation zone, and it's just a matter of time before something positive goes for this company, or retail just continues to lock up shares, and then this thing flies when it starts getting any sort of like volume again. So if Aterian gets a wild hair and somebody writes a DD, or retail starts noticing the stock again, just going, well, it's pretty cheap right now. Maybe take some flyers on it, You're going to see violent movements on it. So none of that's financial advice. It's just kind of how these things work. Like, these are small cap stocks, and they will move very, very, very differently than large cap stocks, except for like now in this market where you have literally the S&P looking like it's trading like a penny stock. Just whoop, whoop, whoop. Like, this is billions of dollars, if not trillions of dollars, just like whoop, 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 whoop. Like, pff, no big deal, I guess, right? Yeah, to me, this is a head fake. And maybe I'm wrong, but to me, the S&P looks like right now a head fake. You just had a bullish crossover on the MACD, right? But you're seeing a slight bend down on the RSI, and then you've crossed over on the stochastic, and like you can see, like your on balance is starting to go down, your ADL is starting to go down, but like it's made this like shallow cross here, and so is this a head fake where tomorrow they're just going to unload down? I don't know what futures look like. Anyone looking at the futures? Got my scotch again. I'll drink my one scotch. Oh, Kirk. Right. I gotta get back to Kirk. Sorry, my ADD's flaring up. All right. So here's Kirk. All right. Red slightly. All right. So Kirk I thought was interesting, and the reason why I took a flyer on it was because what I did was I bought 250 2024 calls. It gives me a ton of time, and it was deep in the money. Because I wanted to see kind of like what's going on with this thing. So it's up there on the squeeze score. It has a 95 on the beta for the squeeze score. Sorry, it's ranked number 95 on the squeeze score at a 90, and it's got a gamma squeeze score of 95. Not a ton of shares available. They have like 15,000 left. The only thing is, though, the cost to borrow is still really low, which means that they're not at like, a point where it's costing them a lot of money to short down the stock. So I don't know if this thing's ready yet, which is why I bought those long dated, but it kind of looks like it's ready for a reversal. So the question's going to be, do you buy shares down here? Probably. That's probably the smarter thing. But I think we had some guy come on here, and he was telling me that they might do like a share buyback or something, or like I can't remember what it was that he said. But utilization's at 100% right now. The cost to borrow is still super low, which I don't know why. You figure you're at 100% utilization, you should probably have, I'm just looking. Yeah, you have 100% utilization. So I would expect that cost to borrow to start increasing soon. If retail's looking at the stock and starting to buy it, I would think that this would eventually, another really small float, like 9.89 million shares for the free float. But there's a huge amount of gaps. So I'll just point this out, right? So Kirk, this is why I'm playing the stock. See this huge gap right there? That's an area of liquidity that really didn't spend a ton of time, right? So they had a little bit of time there, and you had a little bit of time there. But I don't see a ton of volume there. So what I think is at some point it's going to come back and fill in this area of liquidity because gaps like to fill. So as long as they're just going to stay in business, it's going to go back up and try to fill that gap. And that gap's pretty big. Like, I mean, we're talking about like $20 a share. So I bought some deep in the money calls hoping that fills in those gaps. So 30 million share buyback in 2022. Company's turning profitable. Cost of borrow has risen over the last few days. Yeah, it's still low. It's like 3%, but at the same time, it's got a ton of like that gap is interesting to me. That makes me think that at some point that this could be a stock that turns around and fills that gap. Because as long as they're not going to go bankrupt, this thing was oversold, and you're probably going to see a reversal on it. Did you get any more info on DTC? It seems like any bit of volume moved that stock. Yeah, DTC, I mean, they have not written me back, and that's very disappointing from an investor standpoint. To me, it looks like they almost kind of made a double bottom. It's pretty close. I would basically call that like a double bottom. It's pretty darn close right there and right there. So it looks like it kind of is forming this W, and maybe we come back up into this range right here in the sixes. You don't want to go too hard too fast because you start getting overbought pretty quickly on this thing. So what they need to do is, there's still room to run, right? You got plenty of room to the upside to run. This thing looks like it's basically forming a W, and it's starting to come up. What we do know is that there was a good amount of insiders buying this thing. And that's typically bullish from what we've seen in the past. When you have, let me just pull up insiders. wrong stock. Yeah, but this DTC, if DTC actually got volume, DTC would fly. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, DTC, I'm pretty sure has a negative float. Yeah, like, Kirkland's is going to make a recovery and it will do well. And it's going to fill some gaps. And with DTC, if DCC actually got some volume, they would fly. Kind of, I mean, that's like for any stock, that small cap that's getting like nothing right now. But like I'm telling you right now, DTC is really interesting because institutions own a lot of shares on them. Like I think I showed you guys my here. Let me see if I can pull it up. And this has still not been like completely hashed out because I have not spoken to my CPA. Here we go. So this is the only one I want you to look at right now. So you have Class A's and you have Class B's, right? But the Class B's don't trade on like the public exchange like Class A's do. Typically they're reserved for insiders. So they don't like, usually they just get held. And you can see Jan Brothers and Summit own most of these Class Bs. There's a couple other ones. I believe it's the ones they did the mergers with, or they got acquired. And so they now own some Class B shares as well. But really, if you look at the shares outstanding, they only report 63 million, right? So if that's true, then what ends up happening is if there's 63 million shares outstanding Class A's, which is what you see reported on every single website, that means that you would take the 63 million and you would remove all the insiders out, right? So if you took out 42 million shares, which is what was added up in here, you would get a float of 21.18 million shares, right? That's the 42 minus the 63 gives you the 21. Now, here's the problem. If you go through all the 13 Fs, which we already did, I went through all the 13 Fs, which are here, and I add them up, and I got 22 million, right? So I put 22 million because I did all the 13 Fs. I left out all the N parts, like, because I didn't want to double count anything. That leaves you with a negative 1.6 million like free float after institutions. So what I think is actually happening is that these 22 million shares are being lent out to keep, like, you know, so shorts are shorting that. I think short interest is pretty small. It's like maybe 2.6, 2.8. I'm not sure exactly right now. But if you actually look at ownership, like if you take basically, you know, 2.8 divided by there, you get more than 100% of the short is floated. Or sorry, is shorted right now. It's kind of insane. Now, I talked to my friend Alec, and he was saying that if you combine these two together, you get the 94. We know that Bloomberg was reporting that they own 80 million insiders and toots. So if you actually take 94 million minus the 80, you get left with this 14 million, and that would mean that there's only 20% of the short floated. The shares shorted. Now, here's the problem with this, though. This is accounting for both Class A's and Class B's, but Class B's don't get traded there, so I don't know how that works exactly, because this is the part that doesn't make sense to me, at least, and maybe somebody can let me know, but I remember when he spoke about ATER. I did speak about ATER like 10 minutes ago. I'm just going over this stuff for everybody that wants to lag. All right. Like, Aterian's not done anything really since I've written any sort of, like, I wrote the big kind of like DD and updated the numbers, and it's not been doing anything. It's just been kind of consolidating, so there's not a whole lot to talk about there. I mean, I can go over and just say, okay, well, came through. But DZ's been doing a good job with the analysis because he's looking more at like fractal patterns and like kind of the TA side. Yeah, WEBR's another one. WEBR's, I like WEBR. I've got some WEBR calls and a couple shares too. WEBR actually has some bullish inflow. So, all right. So let's pull up WEBR real quick. So they keep banging down on this thing, but I'm telling you, this is. I like WEBR because I think WEBR is a big name that, you know. You want me to pull up dilution real quick? There. So here's dilution tracker, right? Our buddy Sean over there. So if you look at this, small float, not like micro cap like the other ones I've shown you, but like they don't really have a, you know, like a huge issue, and they're not showing like any filings for dilution. Like they're cash flow positive. So I mean, they don't have any dilution on the table immediately, so that's a good thing. So that means it's not going to be stop on that. And then if they do reverse, which you've seen, they've made a run from 7 to 10, and then they've been pushed back down. But they're probably using short interest to push that down, to be my guess. So let's see. All right, let's take a look at the short interest on WEBR. They're number 10 on the short squeeze score. They borrowed all the shares today. They had 350,000 shares to short, and they borrowed all of them. So they're probably going to really hammer it tomorrow. But they've had a cost to borrow that's been about 50% for the last 15 days at least. And they're typically on average shorting between 50 and 72% of the stock every single day. Like, let's see if this matches up. So on the 17th, which was this day right here, they shorted 72% of the volume this day, even though it went up. And then on this day, they shorted 65% of the volume. And then on this day, they shorted 64% of the volume. This day, they shorted 64, and then this, I guess, was like 46. So you might have retail starting to freak out on this stock. But I'm telling you right now, this stock could definitely move if, you know. I'm seeing them using a lot of short interest, which is going to start growing. And then what you're going to probably end up seeing eventually from them is if retail sticks around, you know, they're going to keep trying to push it down, and then you'll hit a spring, and then you'll go. So, but yeah, they're number 10 on the short squeeze board. So I think they do have potential right now. Thoughts on Nikola? Heavily shorted, yet they're selling production, BEV semis. Yeah, so the problem with Nikola, and I when they pushed that truck down the road, that to me was like a death sentence, because I'm never going to take that company seriously because of that. And I understand sometimes you have to do what you have to do in a business, but like that's literally like you're defrauding people at that point. So yeah, not to me, that's not good business practice, and so that's never going to make me want to invest in a company that did that. I know, I think, what was his name, Trevor something or whatever it was, but I think he stepped down, if I remember correctly, and now they're, you know, hopefully being run by a better, 5 days ago. Nikola founder Trevor Milton faces new federal fraud charge tied to ranch purchase. The guy seems like a piece of crap to me. But once again, Is it me or is the IV on SPY low? I mean, it's low. I just took a look at it. I mean, they could be IV crushing right now. But let's see. I just want to make sure. Is there any news on... do you think it's too early for calls on WEBR? I think tomorrow is going to be important for WEBR to see if it bounces. If it bounces off these levels right here and it finds support, then I think what we'll probably be doing, for me at least, is I'll be buying some like deep in the money calls that are pretty far out, as kind of like a safe, like, because I think things can get worse on the overall market, but I think WEBR is one of those that could explode up during a time of when shorts are being, you know. So let me just see real quick. Let's see what those look like right now. WEBR. Okay, here we go. So they only have December calls right now. So for me, I think I'm going to start buying some like $5 WEBR calls. Or what I could do is what I did was I actually sold some 750 puts because I think that they will be going up at some point. So I don't mind collecting that premium, you know, in the future. So I already sold 750 puts. So selling puts is bullish for anyone that's new to options or doesn't know. I collected that premium. I think I got a pretty good price for it. I think I got like 70 cents or maybe it was 80 cents a couple days ago on those. So, and I get to keep that if the stock price is higher than that. Or if it goes below it, then I'm fine buying the shares because I think it will go up down the line. So, for me, selling puts makes sense because if the stock price does drop, I'm happy to buy them at those discounted levels, and they paid me a premium to do it. So that's one strategy that you can look at. Yeah, I mean, so I think what I'll do is I'll probably buy some $5 calls for like December and start from there, and you know, maybe buy. I want to see what happens tomorrow on this, because if it drops down further, if the market tanks, then you know there probably is more downside. But no, the IV on SPY right now is like 24, I think, right? Yeah, IV's being crushed right now. All right. I'm a pumpkin, guys. I'm gonna hop off. I think it's about 11:30 here, so I need to go to bed. About to drop every penny I own to the SPY puts expiring in late July, then throw a huge chunk into Aterian. I mean, once again, not financial advice, Danny, but personally, I would give yourself more theta. If I was going to be buying July, if I thought the thing was going to basically crash in late July or August, I would be buying probably 6 months out minimum on theta. So for me, I'm buying January puts. I know that's pretty aggressive, but I want to be safe about it. So I've been buying 340 and 350 puts for January to give myself plenty of theta. So, but not financial advice. Well, that's really smart, but aren't those really expensive? Yes, they are. But once again, it's the safer thing to do. I'm trying to be smart about it, even though, yeah, it depends on how much you're protecting. So, but, you could always throw in some, far out the money ones that are much cheaper, but if you miss, you miss hard. And so, but, yeah, look into it, research it for yourself. But there's a good amount of, we saw the VIX. That to me indicates that something major is going to happen probably pretty soon. And so we're trying to be prepared for that. But, yeah. All right. So I'm going to hop off. You guys have a wonderful evening. I hope everyone hung out and got to, hear about their stock. If you have any questions or if I missed something, just DM me and I'll try to get to it tomorrow. I'm going to try to do some research. Stuff like that. But yeah, I think there's a ton of smart money that's shorting the SPY. And so all you have to do is if you ever go to I don't even care. I'm just going to show you this. I'm going to sort this by put value. They're shorting like trillions of dollars, and it's all the smart money. It's like Citadel, CTC, Deer Park, Bank of America, Parallax, Twin Tree, Jane Street, Susquehanna, Wolverine. They're all shorting the SPY right now. So, take that for what it's worth, but make sure I got it here. Look at this. Put value in, I guess, what is that? Millions. Like, and they also are net short on it too. So that's a lot of money betting the SPY is going to go down. And it's all smart money. This is all smart money. Crazy. So, all right, I'll get some rest. Thanks, Henry. Thanks, you guys, for hanging out with me. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. If you're not part of the Discord, please join us. It's free. Just a bunch of us talking, hanging out, talking all stocks, and invite people. I'll go ahead and link the... All right, here we go. So if you joined in, you're listening for the first time, you can join the free Discord. Literally, it costs you no money. It was supposed to be educational. So I do these things just to try to help out. And, people are like, oh, you must be making a lot of money on YouTube. Like, I got a check for like $138 or something like that. Like, I don't make a lot of money on YouTube because I don't really have a big audience. But, I'm just doing this to try to help if I can. And, if people ask questions and if I can answer them, I'll try to do that. So, but yeah, that's what's going on, guys. And I appreciate you guys hanging out. All right, here it is. All right. Have a great evening, guys.